I do want to welcome you to our continuing series of panel discussions on industry trends and employment opportunities. Now, our focus today is on a sector of our economy that literally has built Oklahoma, and that is, of course, construction. But in order to continue to thrive, industry leaders say it needs a future workforce with the right skills. I'm Rob McClendon, and I'll be leading today's discussion with a group of panelists I think you'll find both interesting and insightful. Now, representing industry is Mark Lambert, owner of Lambert Construction. Established in 1939, Lambert Construction Company is a commercial general contractor that provides a range of construction services. Now, our next three panelists all come to us this afternoon from the State Construction Industries Board. Ron Morris is the electrical section supervisor. Gary Kirk is supervisor for mechanical, and Deborah Wotek serves as the Construction Industries Board's outreach officer. And our final guest in this afternoon was elected as Oklahoma State Labor Commissioner in 2018. Leslie Osborne is a former Oklahoma lawmaker and business owner. So I'd like to begin with our panelists with the same question for everyone. I think a good place to start is always with everybody's career pathway story, both personally and professionally. And I'd like to go ahead and start with you, Mark, considering that I see that Lambert Construction started in 1939. I assume yours is a family business.
It is. We are in the third generation of ownership. Grandfather Clarence started the company, as you mentioned, in 1939. He was at the helm until 1968, 1969, somewhere in there. And Uncle David took the helm at that time, and he ran the company for nearly 40 years. And then, of course, I grew up in Stillwater, got my degree at Oklahoma State, graduated in 85, went down to Dallas, Texas, and worked in the industry. And then I came back to Stillwater in 2005, bought the controlling interest from the company. So we've been at it, 15, 16 years now. Have grown the company pretty considerably here in the last 15 years, but trying to have fun.
Yeah. Well, I enjoy, I see the signs out all the time. So Ron, how did your interest in construction develop?
I actually ended up getting laid off from a job whenever I was about a couple years out of high school. Ended up going to work for a cousin that was in the electrical field, and started in an apprenticeship program with him. Eventually got licensed, worked my way into master and contractor licensing. I contracted in the state of New Mexico, Arkansas, and in Colorado. Before going to work for the state of New Mexico as an electrical inspector, and then eventually coming here to the state of Oklahoma.
And Gary, what were your motivations to get into construction?
Oh, just when I was in high school, my dad encouraged me to go to CareerTech or Votech back then. And so in 1975, I graduated out of Votech and been in the heating and air conditioning industry ever since for 40-something years now.
And Gary, which tech center did you go to?
Western Votech in Burns Flat, Oklahoma.
All right. I have been there. I have definitely been there. Yeah. So, Deborah, your background is in communications and public affairs. Tell us how you got into this construction biz.
Actually, right out of college, I actually started working for a company as a secretary. And so I've always kind of had some foot in construction, and then kind of went there to a statewide agency and started the communications aspect. So I've kind of always been a little bit into the construction industry and working with some different apprenticeship programs and whatnot. So always been really interested in the construction industry, and my husband's been in it, just it's nice to see things that get built and say you had a part of it. So
absolutely. And Commissioner Osborne, tell us about your life before public service or during public service as well.
Well, I graduated with a business degree from Oklahoma State and started a truck accessories business, Osborne Pickup Accessories, and did that for 22 years. Had never did anything political in that time. I sold basically ranch hand grill guards across the state. I had 25 dealers, and was recruited by a friend when I was in my mid 40s to run for the State House of Representatives, and had never given a speech, never been political. And never think that you have your path hammered out for you, because sometimes the unexpected path comes. Ended up running for the House. I served in the House 10 years, and there I really focused primarily the last few years in the fiscal portion. I was the House Appropriations Chair and worked on state budgets, and had to really learn about funding streams for agencies, to all those types of things, and what's real and what are political talking points. So that was interesting. Then I ran several bills for that affected the Department of Labor. So I got to know the purview of the Department of Labor, and decided to run for that 2 years ago, and have been there a little over 2 years as the Commissioner of Labor. We got a nice agency, about 80 people. Almost everything we do has to do with safety of workforce, which of course includes construction, but also labor statistics that we report through the federal to the Federal Department of Labor, and a lot of stats that come in on things like critical needs industries and things come through. A lot of what we report and do and work with the Federal Department of Labor on.
Good. Thank you. So now that we know where everyone is coming from, I do have some questions, and everyone just join in if you like. This is just going to be a conversation between some of us. And my first one really is, why should someone consider have a career in construction? And Mark, let's start off with you once again, if we can.
Okay. Far away.
So why should someone consider a career in construction, Mark?
Well, a lot of reasons. One is it's the pay is very, very good. A young kid, 16, 17, 18 years old, coming out of high school, they can start at a wage at a minimum somewhere between $15 and $20 an hour. I would suggest that I think for a seasoned, experienced craftsman in our industry, they're making pretty easily between $70,000 and $100,000 a year. It's a wage that far outpaces the average pay of a college graduate. And I'm gonna kind of dovetail in here. One of the questions you had sent out a couple of days ago, Rob, why choose construction? And what I would offer to that is there's a lot of great professions out there. Not to slight any profession, but one benefit of the construction industry is you see the fruits of your labor. I can load up my kids or grandkids and drive down to Dallas, Texas, and show them a project that I completed, that I was involved in, had a hand in 35 years ago. Most of the buildings that are built today in our industry are 75 to 100 year life cycle buildings. And it's very, very rewarding to see the fruits of your labor 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years and beyond, after you invested invested your talents and your energy to complete it. Good. So Deborah, do you have any of the latest statistics on pay range for some of the professions?
I know our 3 trades that we monitor, I think the median salary is $53,000 a year. Obviously it can go up to that because you can become a business owner in this trade. You can sell products, kind of like what the commissioner was talking about. So it can go up from there, but that's the median salary. And I mean, that's a really good start for a lot of kids that can be relatively young making that.
Mm-hmm. And that equates to $25 an hour.
That it does. That it does. Madam Commissioner, throw some of your labor statistics at us.
Well, the first thing I'd seen is, there's a lot of data that every state reports into the Federal Department of Labor. And there's a lot of statistics that are built off of that on everything from workplace injuries to critical needs in occupations. And I've seen a lot of that because I chair the Occupational Licensure Advisory Commission in the state of Oklahoma. So we have 210 jobs in Oklahoma that require an occupational license, which is everything from plumbing to electrical to medical doctors. And because of that, I've seen a lot of which ones of those are in those critical needs categories. And when you look, that's where we're really seeing the needs right here in Oklahoma, and it's just not being met. The associated contractors, general contractors, that's one of their latest reports, is that critical need. Percentage wise, let me see, I've got to pull up my right thing here with a Zoom meeting, but looking at the associated general contractors, their latest statistics I saw show that 81% of construction businesses are having a hard time finding qualified labor. That's no surprise. But when you look at that, I guess a lot of what I like to see is, I'd like to make sure in Oklahoma, like in other places, we keep occupational licensure. There's been a move federally from a lot of groups, not government groups, but to actually eradicate licensure. I think it's something that keeps the integrity of the trades, and I'd be interested to see if the gentlemen that are on here would agree with that. I know I've worked with Deborah on those issues. It's a public safety interest, but it's also something that you can show that you're up to date on that continuing education for those occupational licenses. I think that also merits the higher pay and the ability of the citizen to realize that you're somebody that's trained properly for that type of job. And I think one of the main ways that we need to get kids, to get veterans that come out of the service, and to get people that need to be job retrained is through a lot of our apprenticeship programs and through the CareerTechs. And that's what we've got to get into, more high school counselors. And I've been pushing this for a year or two and would really like to continue working on that, about the value of the trades and ways to get kids in particular. My kids graduated from Amber, Pocasset, a little country town, lots of ag kids that had parents that had never gone to college or career tech, and they don't have the resources, the wherewithal. We've got to have, those are hardworking ag type kids that would be perfect for these occupations, but they just aren't always aware of the pathway that's there. And I think that's a communication gap we've got to figure out how to fill.
So just to follow up with you, is especially about the apprenticeships, is there, you say there's a skills gap to get the apprenticeships? Is it legislation? Is it just education? It's just education?
It's information and education is what I think. And a perfect source of that, and I know this is someone Deborah's worked with a lot, is the Oklahoma Building Trades Unions. And here I am, a Republican elected official, saying, don't be scared to look at the unions, okay? And union membership, that used to be more of a political type thing, but the trades, and there's a lot of them too, the IEC, I believe it is, and some of them that are not union. But the trades, the Oklahoma Building Trades Union puts out a publication every year that lists every qualified apprenticeship across the state, what the criteria are. And when you look at it, it's just great information, in particular, like I said, for that hardworking kid who graduates at 18 and has no idea what to go do. Mm-hmm. Dad might have a farm, but there's no way it can support two families. And these publications are readily available. And a lot of times it's things that you can also do through the CareerTech system. And I just feel like the main disconnect is getting to parents of those kids that help shape and mold and guide their kids to that, and to high school counselors. And right now in Oklahoma, we have a critical shortage of counselors, and they're busy taking IEPs and doing test scores instead of doing career counseling like they used to do in the past. And I think it's incumbent upon all of us in these industries that we have on here to actually educate and to get to our local counselors that this is a fantastic pathway, and show them where does the kid go? Where do they apply? Just the basic 101. And that's where I wanted to talk about that Oklahoma Building Trades Unions, because their website is just a plethora of information.
Okay.
Hey, Rob, can I
Yeah.
actually piggyback on her for just a minute? A couple of
Please.
things. She talked about of job openings, and just to really quantify that, there is 223,000 unfilled construction trade jobs. And those jobs didn't stop during COVID. Those people didn't lose their jobs. A lot of cases, those jobs have just continued and actually grown. The job security level, and I know that's becoming a big deal as people relook for work as well as go into the work field, is that you're always going to need a plumber. You're always going to need an electrician. They can't send that off anywhere else. The jobs are here and they're going to stay here. Even if people quit building homes and buildings, you still have to fix the old ones. And so the job security level in this industry is really high, and it's just not going to be filled in 4 years or 5 years or 10 years. That the demand is strong, and it will continue to be strong because people are still building houses. They still live in houses. And even when the ice storm hit and all the COVID stuff, people were still like, hey, plumber, yeah, you're okay to come in my house because I want my toilet to work, right? So the job security level and just the demand for it is so strong. And I really think kids don't equate that. They just see the plumber working on the toilet, not the plumber working on the hospital lines, especially during COVID, to make sure that those life-saving equipment is working and getting to those patients. And so it's just such a wide range. So definitely wanted to piggyback on those numbers.
Yes, I just had a heat and air person at my house yesterday evening, so I fully appreciate those numbers. So Ron, I want you to jump in here. You said that you came into the industry after having lost a job. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yes.
So would an apprenticeship, would that have helped you back at that time?
Yeah, I probably would have if I hadn't had a family member, but I just was looking for something with a young man with a family trying to find something, and actually it was a family member who told me that, hey, electrical is a great one to get into. Everybody needs electricity in their house, and that's something that I would even tell anybody that would be interested. There's a lot of emerging technologies. We've got solar, wind generation, things like that are going strong in green energy right now, and it still requires electrical people to do it. And that's kind of what got me into it. I thought, well, this would be a great thing to get into, and it was.
Mm-hmm. Oh, Gary, pretty much the same question to you. Give me your elevator speech. Why should someone consider a career in construction?
Well, I just kind of piggyback on a lot of things everybody said. We've always got buildings being built in Oklahoma, but the service part of it is never going to go away. Even when the building industry slows down a little bit, people want their air conditioners working and their lights working and their plumbing working and stuff like that. So there's always opportunity. During this COVID, we thought that people's numbers would be going off, but all the contractors I talked to, they said they probably had better years this year than they had in a long time, because people are at home and they're finding a bunch of stuff that's not working, and they're doing remodel projects and things like that. So they said they've had a really good year this year, just taking care of all that stuff.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mark, I want you to jump in here because we've talked about all the need. So from your standpoint, what do you need from the worker or a prospective worker for someone that's going to enter the construction field?
First, show up. I think that, Deborah had mentioned there is a grave shortage of manpower in the construction industry. We bid a project just earlier today here in Stillwater for a local client, and we're having to stretch our construction schedules out, not just by weeks, but in some cases months, because of the manpower situation. the construction industry has been struggling with available manpower, especially in the skilled craftsmen, mechanical, electrical, plumbing. It's been a challenge for years. And so, you know, what I would offer to a young man, a teenager that's contemplating coming into the industry, first, it's a well-paying wage. The sky's the limit. There's craftsmen, and I'm talking plumbers, mechanics, electricians that are they're well into six figures, guys. I mean, it's a well-paying industry. And so to answer your question, Rob, to the young man, the teenager that's contemplating coming in the industry is just roll up your sleeves and get after it. And it's going to be very, very rewarding, not just financially.
Hey, Mark.
Yes.
Rob, I do want to follow up. You know, you talk about the young man, but this is a great industry for the ladies too. I just have to, as a female, throw that out there.
Sure, absolutely.
I mean, I've seen some amazing female electricians, the details and the pay. You know, there's this talk of pay inequality in other industries, and it's not so prevalent in the construction trades because if you have this license and if you have this skill, this is your pay. And so it can really be rewarding for females because you can make really good money. You can be competitive. And right now there's only 10% of the construction workforce is females right now. And that has grown over the last few years because of the opportunities. But I don't want to exclude any of you guys from speaking that to people who are interested in this, because it is a great industry for females as well. It's the sky is the limit.
You're absolutely correct. We currently have a female intern working with us. She's in the construction management technology program here at OSU. She's been with us for probably 4 months now. Going to be with us through May when she graduates, and then she's going over to Europe to do something. I don't know what. But I have a first cousin, Lucy, that's very, very successful with Manhattan Construction, one of the premier general contractor construction managers in the entire country. And so absolutely, if it were up to my wife, half of the industry should be females. So, and I don't necessarily disagree with her. I mean, they just bring a different perspective and problem solving and creativity that I welcome that, and I appreciate you suggesting that, Deborah.
No, absolutely. You've been great on this, so I appreciate it.
Hey, Deborah, I would add to that with some stats that I got from Jimmy Fish at the Building Trades. There were 66 applicants in 2015 for all of those apprenticeship programs. It was up to 320 applicants by 2019. So we're really seeing a lot more women being interested in that. And I think that that's something that we absolutely need to take into effect, is we're not just talking to young men.
Mm-hmm. Gary, Ron, you have anything to add to this?
No, I'm just, in our trades, I would suggest that they do look into career techs and things like that, because you can, as a junior and senior, and that's what I did when I was in high school, got that out of the way. Of course, we didn't have licensing back in my day, but we do now. And so, like, to be a mechanical journeyman, you have to have 3 years of verifiable experience, 6,000 hours. You can take a completed course in the career tech, and 2 of your years disappear. And then you just have to work as an apprentice for 1 more year. And so 18, 19, somewhere in that area, you're ready to go test, be a journeyman, and then start on that life skill. So just bring that
And Ron, licensing?
Well, I mean, as far as licensing, the great part about these skilled trades that you're talking about, we've already heard. I know Mark mentioned it, Deborah as well. You know, these jobs. I mean, they're well-paid jobs. You know, someone coming in as a journeyman electrician, after they've got their training, you know, they can make up to $36 an hour in some locations. You know, and it's just a great, when electrical, they're looking at a lot of growth. It has a little larger growth rate in the next 10 years over some of the other trades. And so it's a real good one to get into. Such a diversity of things that can be done in the electrical trade as well. You know, things where you're dealing with just small electronics, you know, internet stuff is expanding, you know, small lighting, solar, like I mentioned earlier. There's just such a diversity of things. And if someone will pick a niche, you know, it's a good thing to get into. And these guys that get in these apprenticeship programs, they can take it and run with it, do really well.
And Gary, do you see the same type of growth in the mechanical side of construction?
Yes, quite a bit. And I get calls every day, and every time I visit with contractors, first thing they always ask me, you know, any journeyman? I mean, they're starving for it. I guess all of us guys are getting older, and we're not replacing the new influx of journeymans as much as people are retiring. And I just want to say on mechanical too, there's so many different industries that you can go into with mechanical. You know, we have the HVAC, you can do gas piping, process piping, refrigeration, you know, solar and ground source, med gas. There's just so many controls. There's so many things. It's not just, you can be, if you learn your controls good, you can be a guy that just carries around a computer. And now we've got systems that are, you get on your computer and you can tell each room what temperature it's going to be. You can check your pressures on the air conditioner. You can change your fan speeds and stuff like that. We have programs that'll tell you if the fan goes out or something like that. And you already know, a serviceman already knows what motor serial number that particular unit uses, and they can take that with them, so they don't have to make 2 trips and stuff like that. So the technology is really changing, and it's not all, you know, digging ditches and crawling around in attics. There's just all kinds of different things that you can go into.
Well, let's expand that out a little bit and have everyone talk about some of the trends that we're seeing with the jobs. And this is a good time because this will get replayed in the classroom, and you're going to be talking directly to teachers. What are some of the trends that we're seeing out there that students need to be thinking about? And Ron, I'll let you start us off.
Well, the trends that students need to be thinking about, I mean, as far as, you know, I mean, where we're headed technology wise, I just always say, you know, hey, everybody needs electricity. And like I said before, you're going to keep having that computer that Gary talked about, these guys plug in to go diagnose systems. You're going to have an outlet to plug that into. So, you know, I mean, it just seems like electrical has expanded so much since I started in it. And there again, those little niche things are the things that really make it a good trade, where these people can do some good growth and you know, do well in their career.
I had a student one time tell me, and he was young in his career. He was probably maybe 2 or 3 years into his career. And he talked about how geometry and things like that never made sense to him until he got into construction when he could see it, you know? And so
Absolutely.
So any other trends out there, Deborah? You have anything?
Well, I know that coming out of post-COVID or mid-COVID or whatever we're in now, that a lot of construction trends are starting to either remodel buildings. The cubicle farm is kind of going away, so having to rebuild buildings to actually have individual office spaces, shrinking office spaces, due to a lot of people going to stay remote. And so they're not in their offices. Well, because of that, now people need higher internet and better electricity and stuff in their homes in order to have those home offices in order to do their work. And some places are actually building bigger, even though they're not growing their employment, so people can be spaced out. Just the building trends in and of itself moving forward, I think there's going to be a lot of differences. And, you know, how people come in and out of buildings, because when COVID hit, they were like one door in, one door out. And even though those regulations and stuff may change, people still keep that in mind as they're building this. What if this happens again? Or what if something like this? And so building trends are going to become, if they can, more complicated, but now people are changing their buildings to meet this demand. And so once again, the demand is just going to keep growing.
Yeah. Mark, I'm going to ask you to jump in here. You've had a long and varied career. So how have the trends, what's happened in that career? Talk about trends with me.
Well, I think more and more every year, and sometimes I might even say month to month, technology is changing our industry very rapidly. We spend here, probably north of $40,000 to $50,000 a year just on software programs, project management programs, getting BIM, building information modeling is a big thing in our industry right now. And so we're growing a fair amount of young people, men and women, young men and women, out of the technology degrees coming out of college. And so that's something that we just have to work hard at every day to stay on top of the IT and technology and software and programs and such that are being introduced to the industry.
Okay. So Commissioner Osborne, can we talk a little bit about safety that is underneath the Labor Department? Just educate us.
Well, when you say safety, I mean, we do a lot of things that people don't realize we do as far as safety of citizens. Any public elevator, escalator in the state, except for the ones in the jurisdiction of Oklahoma City, have to be inspected by the Department of Labor every 2 years. So my claim to fame is usually when someone snaps a picture of the elevator license with my signature on it in Godibo or somewhere and says, "Hey, you've been here." And I don't actually have a tool belt, so I have to, but someone has been there. We check, commercial grade hot water heaters and boilers. We are one of 31 states that check every amusement park ride once a year. The ones we have to watch the most for safety are not necessarily whitewater. It's the ones that go up and down at county fairs. And are they put back together properly and that kind of thing. We check everywhere that does compressed natural gas vehicle conversions, because you're basically putting a missile in the back of your truck. And just a lot of things people take for granted. But one of our neatest things in talking about safety is that we have an OSHA division where we go out for free to any business in Oklahoma and we'll make sure that they're OSHA compliant. Because when you hear about OSHA dropping in, that's the federal government making sure that your workplace is safe for your employees. That's not us. But we have a program. We're one of 7 states that has a preemptive program that's free to any business in the state that will come out and embed an OSHA trained employee to make sure that you are doing everything you can to keep your employees safe. It'll keep your workers' comp rates lower. We have one of the best rates in the nation of people not being injured on the job because we do that. So we employ people in that as well that have a lot of OSHA certifications. But one thing I thought of was something that somebody said earlier, and it was about age. I read last week that the average plumber in Oklahoma was 57. And that's when you look at, we're going to be in trouble in a few years. And at one point, the CareerTech system, I believe, only had one CareerTech that actually had a plumbing program. Now I think they're adding, I think it was at MetroTech, I think they're adding a second one at Moore Norman. But we've got to see more of those kind of things. And like I said, publicize these apprenticeships.
Right. And I see Mitchell Thomas on here. That is correct, Mitchell. Aren't we, isn't CareerTech adding a couple more plumbing programs?
Yes, some of the tech centers are adding evening courses through plumbing, and then some of them are adding it in with their construction programs too. So yes. Great.
Thank you. So I want to hear a little bit from the Construction Industry Board. Are there misconceptions that you have to work with that just maybe the general public has about construction that you encounter?
I guess I'll start first and then you guys can talk about y'all's trades individually. I know as a whole, a lot of people don't want their kids doing, the hard labor, the back-breaking labor. But I think as you can see, a lot of the different people have talked about that the careers, it may only be backbreaking until you make it to that journeyman status. And then all of a sudden you have somebody younger that you can go tell to dig the ditch. But I mean, the control panels and the computer side of it and the design side, and there's so many things in this industry that you don't necessarily have to have like a college degree or 4-year degree to get into, but that you can move up. And so that it's this misconception that if you are a plumber, you're only working on stinky toilets. It's just something I feel like we'll probably always have to battle on some level, but it is a pretty strong misconception.
Yeah. So Gary, besides the stinky toilets, any other misconceptions?
Well, now I kind of went in the same line as you're saying. Like I say, it's, a lot of people don't want to crawl around in attics and things like that. But that's not where it all is. And kind of like what she says, after you get your journeyman's license, they're usually going to be sending apprentices to do that kind of job. But there are a lot of, like I said, with controls and service work and stuff like that, it's a lot better than that. They crawl around and digging ditches and stuff like that.
Ron, jump on in here.
Well, the misconceptions there again were, somebody thinks I don't want to climb in an attic or whatever, but those guys that do that service work sometimes are the ones that make the most money because nobody else will do it. But yeah, it's not always about that. I mean, there's in electrical especially, such a diversity of things that you can get into. I mean, there's guys that sit in air conditioned rooms all day and work on electrical systems and keep things running, and it's not back-breaking work. Believe me, I'm double the man I was when I got married. So it's not always back-breaking work.
I can appreciate that. COVID-19 hit me a little hard. I gained COVID-20. So Mark, same thing. Any misconceptions you have to deal with when you're interviewing people? Mark, I got you on mute here. There you go. Yeah.
So I have to admit, I mean, when I was a college kid, and peer pressures and such, I had initially a concern about getting my hands dirty, that it would put me in some kind of a social class that was less than attractive. But I decided to get my hands dirty all the same. And as Ron was mentioning, it's just a progression. I mean, for a short period, it might mean a little bit of sweat and some dirty hands, but my gosh, between plumbing and mechanical and electrical, IT, communications, there are a lot of people in our industry that work from their desk. I mean, they work in an office environment, and they are very, very instrumental to our industry. Their computer skills, their technology skills, but at the end of the day, in construction, be it residential or commercial, it means field work. But they're all attractive professions, and I think there are a lot of people out there that are drawn to that, even if it means getting their hands dirty.
Yeah. And what really stuck with me with what you said earlier, Mark, is this is an industry of substance. What you do is around for a lot of years, and you can point to with a source of pride. Well, Well, we just have about 10 minutes left. So I am going to ask my favorite question here to wrap this up. And it's always that elevator talk. What would you, and I'm going to start with you, Ron, so I'm going to get you to think about it. What would you say to the 16-year-old Ron about the construction industry that you know now?
Oh, boy, that's a good one. Well, I guess initially going into it, it has been one of those things I would tell myself, hey, it's going to be great. You know, I have never had a layoff since that other job in a totally different sector. Since then, I've always had work, and I would tell myself, you know, work hard, and you'll get to where you want to go, and that's what's happened.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Commissioner, would you like to jump in here?
Well, obviously, growing up on a farm and then selling truck parts, I wasn't scared of hard work either. And I think that is something, if we want to be totally honest, a lot of kids don't know how to work like that anymore. You know, we used to have hay haulers on the farm. You can't find a hay hauler anymore. But like these gentlemen have said, not every job requires what a hay hauler had to do. And if so, it might only be in those first few years. So I think the main thing would be to work with a counselor. If you're that kid, work with a counselor for a path that you'd like to find. And so 2 resources I want to say on that for anyone that would be interested: on the Department of Labor, Oklahoma Department of Labor website. We have a link to that occupational licensure commission that I chair. And on it is an interactive sheet that will tell that you can click on for every job that requires a license. So say that you go to electrical, it's going to take you to CIB if that's who does the electrical licenses. It'll tell you what education you need, what experience you need, how much does a license cost. There's somebody you can talk to at each of those entities. And the second thing would be to pull up that Oklahoma Building Trade Union website and look at all the apprenticeships across the state. Very few of them have a cost. It's basically no cost. And I have a daughter with 2 master's degrees and a $50,000 college debt that's a high school counselor. It's going to take her 30 years to pay that off. I would now advise her to consider a trade.
Okay. So Gary, same question to you. 16-year-old Gary, what would you tell him knowing what you know now?
Tell him to do the same thing he did. I think that CareerTech was a very good decision to get that basic training out of the way, and then you could go work for a contractor, and then teaching you more and more. This is an industry that you're going to be training the rest of your life. I mean, the equipment changes every so many years, and you need to be retrained on stuff, new stuff coming all the time. So you're always going to be training, getting education. But I would say, yeah, if you could get that done when you're in high school, some of that out of the way, and it puts you in the path for success, earlier, and somebody having to, not saying anything bad about college or anything like that, but yeah, that, 4 or 5 years and that kind of debt that people are paying off, these guys, by the time those guys get out of college, are already going to be making that kind of money, so I stick with, I just love the CareerTech and that kind of big supporter of that.
By the time your friends get out of school, then you're going to be their boss, right?
Yeah.
Very, very true. And Mark, you hire people. So a difference between a college degree and a skills certification?
Hey, I think the tradesmen are many tradesmen are making more money than the college graduates. Bottom line.
Okay. So Deborah, I will end with you. Talk to that 16-year-old you. Give us your elevator speech about the construction trades.
16-year-old me, you're not going to be a vet. Don't go to college to be a vet. Maybe you're going to get a job first. Once again, I like how everybody in the trades like, don't change a thing. And those that aren't are like, yeah, we probably would have changed a little bit. So I probably should have skipped a couple years of college and just went straight to work. I think I would have been more successful.
I totally get that. So I do see some other people I know that are working the construction trades on this. Does anyone else have any questions or anything you'd like to add? This would be a great time to speak up because we have all of 7 minutes.
Rob, we do have plenty of comments in the chat box. We do have one relevant question I'd like to pose to the panel. That question is about the value of getting a credential or a certification. What's the basic difference between your chances of steady employment and higher pay in getting a credential versus not getting a certification?
Deborah, you want to answer that?
I feel like that's a lot of pressure. There's so many different licenses and certifications out there. I think in most cases, if you get a certification, it helps you towards that licensure. You get to normally start in the field a little bit higher instead of being like a first year apprentice. That certificate gets you in higher. So it's difficult to say exactly because I know it is such broad, like the commissioner said, there's so many different licenses and certificates and everything out there. But I have never in the construction industry having any, I mean, even just an OSHA 10 class, if you go to a contractor and you already have an OSHA 10, which is just 10 hours of safety training, you would potentially start at a higher pay scale because you already have training done. And so most cases, any of those certifications, anything that you can get under your belt only helps you in this industry. I've never heard of any that will hurt you or be pointless.
All right. Anyone else want to jump in here? Well, if not, I certainly want to thank everyone for joining us. We really appreciate this. This will have a second life. We'll take some of this and turn it into a podcast. And then this will be used in the classroom. Some of it is supplemental, and probably some counselors will be seeing this as well. So I want to thank each of the panelists, Mark, Deborah, Leslie, Ron, Gary, appreciate you for being with us and talking about this. And I hope everyone has a fantastic afternoon. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.